Ever feel like you're going through life's ups and downs completely solo? Well, today we're taking a deep dive into a pretty fascinating idea that there's a powerful force out there
Yeah.
that's totally invested in your success.
Interesting concept.
Yeah, and we're going to be looking at it from two totally different angles. We've got this ancient psalm, which is basically like poetry mixed with prayer,
Mm-hmm.
and then a modern Christian text that speaks directly to this idea of divine support.
Okay. I like it.
So kind of old school versus new school.
Right.
But both getting at this idea of whether there's something bigger than us rooting for our success.
Sounds like a great deep dive.
Okay, so let's jump right in with Psalm 35.27.
Right.
Let the Lord be magnified, who has pleasure in the prosperity of his servant. Really powerful words, right?
Definitely. There's a real depth of emotion there.
Yeah, and to understand that, we got to remember the Psalms were like hymns, prayers, they often express these raw human emotions to God.
Exactly. They weren't holding back.
Right, and it's fascinating that even thousands of years ago, people were already seeking divine favor for their work, their goals, not just their spiritual side.
Absolutely. It shows how deeply ingrained that desire for support in all areas of life really is.
Totally. And that word prosperity
Uh-huh.
really stands out. What do you think it meant to the psalmist? Was it just about money and stuff?
I don't think so, no. It probably had a much wider meaning.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd say it encompassed material success, for sure, but also a sense of overall well-being, thriving, like good relationships, purpose in life, even inner peace.
Makes sense. Now let's switch gears to our modern text.
Okay.
The author just straight up asks, do you believe that Jesus is interested in your success? Makes you think,
Oh,
right?
sure. It's a very direct question.
It is. And what's really interesting is how the author emphasizes that Jesus cares about every single part of a person's life, not just the big life-changing events.
Right. Even the seemingly small stuff.
Totally. They even talk about, get this, praying about a pimple.
I love that example. It's so relatable.
Right. It just shows that nothing is too small for divine attention.
Exactly. It goes back to that idea of a personal God we saw in the psalm, one who's tuned in to even the tiny details of our lives.
I like that. And speaking of details, there's another point in the modern text that I found really interesting. That's the emphasis on unmerited favor.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
What does that even mean? And how does it change how we usually think about success? That whole idea of having to earn it.
It's a deep concept for sure, but I think what the author's getting at is that sometimes success might come from blessings or opportunities that we haven't necessarily earned through our own hard work.
So it's not all about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
Right. It challenges that narrative and suggests that maybe there's this element of grace involved, something given to us freely.
Makes you wonder how much of our success is actually due to our own efforts versus this unmerited favor, huh?
Definitely food for thought.
It is. And then the author goes on to list all these challenges people face: lack, addiction, fear, sickness, broken relationships.
Universal struggles, everyone deals with them at some point.
Exactly. Which makes this idea of divine support all the more, appealing maybe.
Absolutely. It offers a sense of hope and comfort in the midst of those struggles.
Yeah. So if we really buy into this idea of divine support, does it change how we approach our goals?
I think it could, yeah.
Does it give us more comfort, maybe even motivation?
It might. It could also make us question, the whole balance between free will and destiny.
Whoa. Yeah, that's deep.
Right. If there's this force guiding us towards success, how much control do we actually have?
But isn't there a risk in thinking that everything's preordained, that we don't really have to try?
That's a valid concern, for sure.
Could it lead to complacency, a lack of personal responsibility?
It's a fine line to walk, that's for sure. I think what's great about both of these sources is that they bring up these big questions without necessarily giving us easy answers.
I see what you mean. So whether you find these ideas comforting, challenging, or just plain curious, they definitely leave us with something to think about.
Absolutely.
And that is, if there really is a force out there cheering us on, rooting for our success, how does that change how we see our own journey?
It's a powerful question. Does it change what success even means to us? Does it affect how we go after our goals?
Yeah, and maybe even how we deal with those inevitable setbacks we all face. Right?
Exactly.
It's definitely something to ponder as we continue on our own individual paths.
Well said.
All right, that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for listening.